Well, let's find out a little more about what's actually happened with me as our science reporter, Jonathan Webb. And Jonathan, tell us a bit more about the geology underlying the area where this quake began, the epicenter.
Well, what causes big quakes in the Himalayan region and the quake that we saw today is the slow progress of the tectonic plate that India is on, that subcontinental plate, gradually moving northwards and diving under the Eurasian plate at that Himalayan region. Now, that's a slow process. It's only about 4 or 5 centimetres of progress it makes every year, but of course it's a huge amount of force and does produce these big earthquakes periodically. Of course, where the earthquake happened today is over on the corner of that interaction. So the Himalayas, which are formed by that gradual impact, form, I guess, the front line of that interaction, if you like. We're over on the corner where that head-on collision interacts with the sort of side slipping that you get where the Indian plate interacts with the Eurasian plate over on the sort of Afghanistan side.
And I noticed that one of the things you wrote in your piece on our website is that this is a part of the region where deep earthquakes are more common.
It is, yeah. So there's a lot of very complex interactions there because of the different types of forces at play, and there are a lot of small fault lines involved, and because of the way those things are happening there, and also because there's a particular part of the Indian plate that's actually being pulled all the way down into the Earth's mantle, well beneath the crust. There do seem to be very deep quakes in this particular Hindu Kush region, sort of over 200 kilometres below the surface, which means you tend to get slightly less ground shaking by the time they reach the surface.
Now, of course, there is a high death toll here. It's rising all the time. That said, had this been a really shallow earthquake, it could have been really utter devastation.
That's right. It's when the quakes are really close to the surface, a matter of a few kilometres, much closer than today's quake. That's when the amount of damage, especially if they happen in a highly populated region, gets really high. And that's what we saw in Nepal in April and May this year. There were quakes of about this magnitude just a few kilometres below the surface on that main front line in the Himalayan region. And so that explains, if you like, the difference between those quakes and what we saw today.
Jonathan Webb, thanks very much for coming onto the OS set. Thank you. And now we're going to talk to you about our daily diet and what